Is pre-implantation genetic diagnosis a panacea for us all? If I had a cancer gene, would it be right for me? One of the world's leading cancer experts isn't so sure.
There's a phenomena in genetics and cellular development called co-expression of genes. Two genes can be stuck together.
So it means if I've got one gene, it might come with another gene.
It is likely, if you've got the mutant gene, that may also be co-expressed with other favourable components of the human genome. In breeding out the BRCA1, BRCA2 mutation, you may inadvertently be breeding out something of value. Because just say that the gene or the complex of genes for beauty, or say a complex of genes for high intelligence. So there is a risk of if we select out all the embryos that carry these mutations, we may be selecting out some of the best people in society. Now, you think that's facetious? I don't know. It may not be beauty and intelligence, but it may be something else that has an evolutionary advantage that compensates for the evolutionary disadvantage.
Professor Baum leaves me confused. There was so much about my mother that I loved and would be loath to lose in my children. But maybe it's my duty to prevent disease being passed down the generations. I'm going to Newcastle to meet Daniel and his partner Danielle. They're true pioneers, one of only a handful of couples now using PGD on the NHS to breed out the breast cancer gene. A gene which killed Daniel's sister at 28.
It's quite hard to watch somebody go through all of that, optimistic 1 minute, and then the next to receive another diagnosis that would mean some more therapies.
I guess I'm slightly uncomfortable about messing with nature.
I think we'd feel a lot less comfortable with the idea if we were being more selective over...
If we were saying we wanted a boy or a girl or...
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the other option we were given was to conceive naturally and then have a gender test and have a termination if it's a girl. And I couldn't do that.
It does make me think about, would I want to prevent a child of mine going through what my mum went through?
If science has given me that power to do something about that really I should use that power. That's something that, human race has created. It's part of our kind of history of our progress. So for me, that's an opportunity, really.
It could happen perfectly naturally. The child we end up with, we could have conceived naturally.
Yes.
It's just the risk factor, isn't it?
Getting back to your family history, Adam, about your mother developing a cancer when she was much older than, say, my sister, but there's no guarantees that if it was a genetic cancer that it would be as late onset as that. And it's that sort of level of... it's that unknown element which, if I can at all take control of something, I would do so, and I suppose that's what I'm doing here.
Daniel and Danielle will go through PGD later in the year at Guy's. Meanwhile, it's time for Tracy and Thomas to discover if their embryo has survived.
Today is the day we do the pregnancy test to find out if it's worked or not.
We're excited, but also very nervous.
Fingers crossed that it's positive.
Yeah.
It feels really bizarre. Sort of known as make or break now.
Yeah. Nervous. Really nervous.
I haven't even looked.
We have to wait 3 minutes.
This is the worst 3 minutes ever.
Yeah, it'll be the longest as well. Okay. Do you want me to do it or do you want to do it?
You do it.
Right, well, if it's positive, there will be 2 blue lines.
So this determines the rest of hopefully our lives go. Do you want to do it?
2 blue lines. Pregnant! Fantastic. Can't believe it's worked. First time. Oh, I'm shaking. That's brilliant. Confirm, it says positive result. 2 blue lines. Oh, oh, that's fantastic. Oh, gotta start planning. You know what I mean? God.
Can't believe it.
That's our first time round.
Hi Mum, it's only me. Did the test. Yeah, it's positive.
The NHS provides PGD for hundreds of couples each year. But there are millions of people in Britain at risk of inherited diseases. I want to know if this brave new world of genetics is reaching them all. One of the commonest conditions is called familial hypercholesterolemia, or FH. Norman's a shopkeeper who's had high cholesterol all his life and takes a statin drug to control it. He never imagined it would be a disease that could be passed down the generations.
I thought this was something that I had, and that was it. And I always put it down to the fact that my mother gave me milk. Every day I had to drink milk, and if it wasn't milk, it was Nestlé's chocolate.
Absolutely nothing. And I know my father suffered from high cholesterol for many, many years. But, you just, okay, it's high cholesterol. It's like having asthma. It's like any other. I didn't think much of it. I didn't connect the dots to heart attacks or anything. I never connected it.
Norman's lucky. He's one of the few people in England who's been tested for FH.
Your liver is not effective in removing the LDL cholesterol.
I understand.
Okay, that's why your cholesterol becomes high. And this is determined by a gene defect, and that is what they have found, the gene defect responsible for this. This is not going to help you, but it's going to help your family. You have 2 daughters who have not been screened, and you have grandchildren.
I have.
Then we need to screen the grandchildren as well after we have screened your children.
Norman's family will now be tested. The sooner FH is detected, the sooner the life-saving statin drugs can be started. But this testing service isn't paid for by the NHS. It's part of a research study by Professor Steve Humphreys of University College London.
Untreated, about half the men with FH will have had a heart attack by the age of 55 years. For example, if I've got FH, then I must have inherited it either from my mum or my dad. Half of my brothers and sisters on average will have it as well, and half of my children. So once you've found me, because I've developed early heart disease, then on average I've got 5 living relatives. If you test them, you're going to find 2 or 3 with FH. We call it cascade testing the relatives of someone who has FH. It's a very cost-effective way of finding new FH patients.
How much cascade testing is happening in England?
Well, that's the part that really upsets me. Cascade testing is not occurring, and DNA testing is not occurring almost anywhere in England. However, it is occurring very much in Wales and in Scotland and in Northern Ireland. In the UK, there are about 100,000 FH patients who have not been diagnosed yet. Half of them are men, half of them are going to have a heart attack by the age of 55 unless we can find them. It makes no sense. It's almost a scandal, I think, that we're not doing this, we're not taking this forward.
And why is the NHS not getting its act together?
They just don't see it as a big problem. Everyone agrees that doing this is cost effective. But when we go to a primary care trust or a GP and say, look, it would be good for you to commission this, it's cost effective, they say, will it save me money in the next 12 months? because that's the budgetary constraints they have. And we say, no, it'll cost you money now, but you'll save money in year 2 and year 3 because people won't be having heart attacks.
Well, I think that the NHS, and I don't mean it in a derogative way because it's a great institution. I've lived in a few countries and I've never found an institution like this. But there are times when they let the people down, and this is one of them.
It's shocking to learn that there are 100,000 people with a fatal disease that should easily be detected. And I've learnt that it would cost less than £10 million a year to find and treat these people. For other diseases, there is also a slowness to embrace the brave new world of genetics. Sickle cell anemia is another of Britain's most prevalent genetic diseases, with 250,000 people being carriers. Starting in childhood, crises attack every few months. In London, it's now one of the commonest reasons for admission to hospital. Simeon has just arrived in hospital in South London. His mother Helen is at his side.
Simeon had gone skating with his friends, but he said as he got off the bus and walked down the road, he just felt that his legs going, and he had all this pain in his stomach and his hips, and then he just found himself literally on the floor, and it was only because his friends had seen him and they picked him up and they called the ambulance. When we got here, they'd give him a small shot of morphine so that it could help stabilise the pain.
And how often does it happen to Simeon?
It happens probably about every 4 months, 5 months. I'm hoping he'll learn to live with it, because this is the only thing we can do. There isn't actually a cure for sickle cell. All this could be prevented if I'd have learned to know about my sickle cell genes, how they pass on, but I don't think in our times we were given that choice of a sickle-free life. I don't think we were given that choice.
Helen has spent much of her life in and out of accident and emergency, because she, Simeon, and her daughter Misha all have the disease.
Sickle cell is a red blood disorder, and instead of the cells being a circular shape, they're a sickle shape, and sickle is like a half moon shape. So usually the red blood cells, or even your white blood cells, they flow down the arteries and your veins quite easily. But when they're a half moon shape, they can get stuck going down, or they can clump together, and it becomes difficult.
It feels crazy. It just feels like sharp pains mixed with somebody kind of constantly stabbing you, having no mercy.
And then you've got to get the morphine.
And that's to me, that's like, because it's so great. I mean,
it wipes out all pain, doesn't it?
Wipes out all pain. If you get a good dosage of it.
It feels like the worst thing, like, oh my days, why didn't I think about how this was going to affect her before I was having children? Or it's really awful to see your own child in pain like that.
Sickle cell is passed on when both parents are carriers. The NHS offers a test in pregnancy, by which point the only way to prevent a sickle cell birth is abortion. And even then, this system only really works if both parents have been tested at an early stage. So Helen's now chasing the 50% of fathers who aren't tested.
We go and we arrange screenings for the sickle cell DVD. It's called The Family Legacy. I think it's important to raise awareness because sickle cell's like a silent disorder. I think because it's a black disorder, it doesn't get a lot of publicity.
Sickle cell is really rare, right? 1 in every 2,000 births, but 1 in every 4 West Africans is a carrier. If you are a carrier of the gene, we'd like the father to come in for a screening also.
Have your attention, please.
Because men are finding it hard to have men come in and get screened to see if they've got the sickle trait or not. So a lot of the time when it does happen in real life, it's always blamed on the woman, and the woman can't have a full sickle cell child.